18. The irresistible story of how you died. 4 wild words. On the corner of Short and Long Street is a derelict house with a small, circular, blue plaque on the wall. Passers-by ignore the run-down, roofless property, except to comment how the building should be razed to the ground because of the tramps and the rats and the wheels disease and the empty cider cans. The lettering on the plaque, almost as unloved as the residence itself, is all but worn away. If you manage to climb over the security fence that the council erected after the accident, then you would first have to negotiate the laceless trainers, some with poo in, some without. You would have to avoid the 6-foot hole in the ground that locals think was intended as a triad grave. Finally, you would want to sidestep the cat's graveyard, a space in the front garden where a lazy council worker had been tossing roadkill. Only then would you be standing beneath the blue plaque, and only then would you be able to squint and make out the letters. Urbane Dunstable, inventor, was born here in 1921 and died here in mysterious circumstances in 1975. If then, piqued by the intrigue and brimming with the courage of a person who had successfully avoided 7 laceless poo-filled trainers, you decided to respond to your natural curiosity, to your innate desire to seek closure in all things, then you would have begun the journey that would end your life. Scared? You should be. What, you ask, would have happened had you knocked on the door of the next house on Long Street or the adjacent house on Short Street? Seems logical as your next port of call, doesn't it? If you were to rap gently on the red oak door of number 2 Long Street, a woman in a floral housecoat would answer, one eyelid closed shut to hide the missing eyeball. I was just in the area, you'd say, and I saw the blue plaque. Blue plaque, you say, she'd say. And before you'd had a chance to nod or point or scream, she'd have shot you in the forehead with the very nail gun that caused her to lose her left eye. She's like that, the widow at number 2 Long Street. She would have dragged you from the porch, checking left and right, brought you to the shed at the back of her garden, and then skinned you. So, what about number 1 Short Street, I hear you say, as you check over your shoulder for axe murderers and sex fiends? Well, what about it? Are you still curious? Have you not learned your lesson? Very well. If you were to knock assertively on the door of number 1 Short Street, you would first be taken by the knocker itself, which, you would realize to your disgust, was dripping with blood. It might take a moment or two before you would understand that the blood was your own. A rusty spike, coated in a numbing agent, shot right through your hand the second you touched the knocker. The door would then open, and a thin man, with jaundiced eyes and a withered arm, would emerge. "Can I help you?" he'd say, his withered arm suddenly caught by an unexpected gust of air and thrown up in an involuntary wave. "I appear to be bleeding," you reply, as the numbing agent wore off. "Oh dear," he'd say, his thin, knobbly tongue running over his thin, parched, chapped lips. "Come in. I have some arnica around here somewhere." He'd bring you into his kitchen and you'd ignore the smell, just to be nice. You would be struck by the meters of flypaper hanging from the ceiling. You might even start counting the flies on one strip. And stop before you'd get to 100. Stop, because what he is rubbing on your cut is not arnica. Stop, because the expression on his face, the angle of his grin, is just south of twisted and well north of insane. You'd scream. You'd bang your free hand on the formica-topped table. Of course you would. Who wouldn't? What he was rubbing on your open wound was a snake, a thin, venomous snake with purple and red scales and eyes as jaundiced as their owner. Death wouldn't come quickly, though, and you can be sure that Mr. No. 1 Short Street would have some sexual peccadillos that he's been aching to try out. Right now, you are thinking, why did I have to climb that fence? Why couldn't I have simply walked past and continued on to my job as a blah at the blah blah blah? You move uneasily in your seat, conscious that a few moments ago there was a noise upstairs that you cannot explain. It could have been a tree tapping on a window, or maybe something in the attic settling and falling, but you know it wasn't. Yet still, despite the faint scent of ammonia that is filling your room, you are consumed by Urbane Dunstable and the mysterious circumstances in which she lost her life. Who was she? How did she die? When you go to bed tonight, you would sleep for 2 hours, whereupon a one-eyed, one-armed bastard son of No. 1 Short Street and No. 2 Long Street will wake you, tell you who Urbane Dunstable was, and show you how she died. Then he will take the laces out of your trainers and poo in them.